Hi, and welcome to Faculty Spotlight. I am here today, Virginia Horan, with Ellen Schuler Mauk, who has been our Faculty Association president for how many years?
34.
34 years, and a member of our faculty for 43 years. And it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a true confession. I started here in 1991. I was 26, and I didn't meet you, but I knew who you were, and I just was. She is fierce, and I mean that in the best possible way, and how does she do it all? So I wanted to ask you, we know about you with the union, we forget sometimes about the teaching, but you're also a mother of two and a wife, so how have you managed all this for so long?
With a lot of luck and a lot of help. No woman is an island.
Right.
It takes a village, whatever cliche. You just do it. I mean, my husband has been very supportive. It's a juggling act. I had great babysitters who were wonderful, but there were times that when I was going to graduate school, in fact, after I was elected president, I thought I really ought to know what I'm doing.
I was going to ask you, how did you slip that degree in there because you went to Cornell?
Well, it was a joint program with Cornell and Baruch College. So all of the courses were at Baruch in the city, and the labor relations courses were taught by the Cornell faculty. So they would fly down on Tuesdays and Thursday nights to teach those courses. It was a program that took me about, I want to say, probably about 4 years to complete.
While you were doing all of the union work and the teaching?
And
the children?
And both of my kids were born during that period.
Wow.
So.
Okay, I'm officially...
But you know, I mean, part of it was just being very organized. My husband worked in the city at the time. He would get home about 7 o'clock at night. My classes were at 6 o'clock. My babysitter had to leave. My regular babysitter had to leave at 5 o'clock. So I would line up teenage babysitters to babysit the kids.
The fill-in babysitter after the regular
yeah, so
unbelievable.
It was, but you know, it was the kind of thing that you had to do it, so you just did it.
Okay.
I was born in Chicago. My mother was from Chicago. My father was from Kentucky. After they were married and I was born, when I was 2, we moved to Kentucky. And that's where I spent my childhood. And
that's why you're so nice.
It must be. It must be.
Even after all
yes,
this.
The home of beautiful horses and fast women, right?
And you're one of 9.
I'm one of 9, right.
Wow. So how did you become interested in teaching?
You know, it was something that I always wanted to do, and probably because I had very good teachers. I mean, I went to Catholic school. The nuns that I had were fabulous. I mean, they were in habits, but you know, you'd go out for recess and they'd be playing kickball with you. So they were kind of great female role models, and they always encouraged us to get involved in non-traditional kinds of things. I mean, I was the reporter for the boys' basketball team.
That's great.
I was, the class vice president. I mean, they were very encouraging, very nurturing,
and empowering,
and very empowering. And they also expressed their displeasure.
Yes.
I remember one time there was a group of us who were waiting for the basketball players, and we were in a car waiting, and it was on a school night, and one of the nuns came by and heard us because we were laughing and giggling. And we probably were not supposed to be there, but anyway, she walked by and she looked in and she said, "You girls should not be here." And she saw me in the back seat and she said, "And you, Ellen?" You know?
You've disappointed me.
I know, so I had to go home right away and tell my parents where I was because I knew she was going to call. You know?
They didn't, and also just one look, and
that's right.
I didn't want to disappoint them either. Yeah. But fabulous teachers. So you chose English. Why?
I chose English. Again, it was I love to read. Every summer I would take an author and like read everything that I possibly could by that author. I mean, I remember my Truman Capote summer.
Oh, great.
I remember, reading, Shakespeare one summer. I mean, on my own as a kid. I mean, it was just something that I liked to do, and so that became my passion. And never thought I would do anything else. Now, I think you also have to realize that, I mean, when I was growing up, women were kind of pigeonholed into teaching and nursing. When I came to Suffolk, I was 23 years old, just out of graduate school. But I wanted to come to New York, and because, well, I grew up in northern Kentucky, and which is literally 1 mile from downtown Cincinnati. Yeah. So my mother used to always say, of all of her kids, I was the one who used to always go into Cincinnati. The rest of them stayed at home. I was kind of the urban child. And when I was a senior in high school, I went to the 1964 World's Fair in New York, as well as Washington, D.C., and it was like, I'm coming back here.
You loved it?
Yeah, I mean, we stayed in a hotel on Broadway. We took the subway every day out to the World's
Right, because it
Fair.
was in Queens.
It was in Queens. So, you know, I was coming back to New York. When I was at Purdue, one of my fellow students was from New York City. She grew up on the Lower East Side, and we decided that we were going to apply to schools up and down the East Coast. We would come together. She got a job at Nassau. I got the job at Suffolk.
That's amazing.
So, and her parents, who were living on the Lower East Side, basically adopted me. So it wasn't as scary.
How soon did you get involved in the union?
I probably got involved in the union maybe about 4 years after I was at Suffolk. Before I ever stepped foot on the campus to start officially as a teacher, I mean, I came here for an interview, I got a letter in the mail saying that my pay had been increased by $1,000 because the union had just settled its very first contract.
Wow.
So it was like, oh, this is a good place.
I like this union.
Right. But very frankly, I didn't really know what that meant. I mean, there were activists in the English department, and they were taking care of things, but I was just so focused on, doing, lessons
learning
and
how to
learning
be a
how to
teacher.
and finding out where things were, and keeping one step ahead of where I was supposed to be in the class.
Yeah. One chapter ahead those
That's right.
first few years.
And grading papers. So the first couple of years while I was active in the department, I was really focused on English department things, and I wasn't looking much outward. I think I probably got involved. There was a call for doing a constitutional revision.
Okay.
And when I was at Purdue, I was involved in the Graduate Student Association out there. We were formulating an association. It was in 1968, and when a lot of graduate students were getting involved and becoming much more active.
Sure,
and
activism in general.
Yeah, and trying to determine, their graduate careers. So I'd worked on a constitution and bylaws there, so I had some skills in knowing how to deal with that kind of technical language. So I said, I can do this, and got involved working on the constitutional committee, then got involved in the college personnel committee, and then it was, I'm trying to think, maybe 1976, I was asked to be on a contract draft committee. Again, little pieces, and finally, someone came up to me and said, would you like to be the secretary? So I said, sure, not knowing what to expect. We were in the middle of negotiations, and I took the job on in January, and between January and May, we had 22 executive council meetings, and I decided I never, ever, ever want to be a secretary again.
Well, throughout all of this, I mean, it's been 34 years. What was the darkest time during that with regard to the union?
When you go into negotiations, you prep a lot, and you read other people's contracts, and you work on contract language, and you talk with your team, and you talk with the contract draft committee in terms of what they want, what we want, where we think we can go. And I mean, negotiations is never a debating committee. It's not who won the point.
Right.
Basically, it's a situation in which you have to convince the other side that they want what you want. And we had a very difficult negotiations starting in the late 80s. new county executive, Pat Halpin. He was a Democrat, and you know, he was young. In fact, he was 34 years old, and there were things in the newspaper that said that all of his assistants had to be younger than he was. But we thought we had a very good relationship. He had been a county legislator whom I'd worked with. He had been a state legislator that we'd helped become a state legislator, and then he came back to be county executive. And we thought you know, we could get along well. And the negotiations were probably the most difficult that I've ever had. And it wasn't just because we were disagreeing over degree. We were disagreeing in terms of values. They wanted to gut the seniority provision. They wanted to take away tenure. They wanted to change health insurance. They wanted to take out class size. I mean, these were like bedrock issues. And we were all shocked.
You must have been stunned that it's not what you expected.
We were stunned. It was like, you know, you're a Democrat? This is what you're promoting? And it was very difficult because we were not discussing, we were not on the same plane at all. And it became more and more difficult, and they were adamant about it. And through my career, we've had some votes of the membership to decide that we might consider a strike vote. I mean, very tentative, very nebulous. And in this one, we came very close to having a strike. And to the point that the membership really gave us an authorization to come back to them should the negotiations break down. We did go out and we had a strike headquarters. We took all of our files, desks, everything out of the union office. We found a storefront where we set it up.
The anxiety level must have been.
It was very, very high. And this was, it was over a summer period. We had gone through impasse. We had gone through mediation. We had gone through what they called super conciliation. We were back in mediation. I mean, it just was not ending at all. And
what happened?
Well, I mean, we started doing a lot of political action. We were picketing the board meetings. We came within 48 hours of actually calling a strike, and faculty were ready. We had lists of we had strike captains. We had lists of people's phone numbers. We had things set up. We had picket signs. In fact, this banner was made then. And if you look at the bottom of it, it's Velcro. And we had two things on the bottom of it. The first one said Crisis Center, and we had that in our Crisis Center.
Right.
And then the other one said Strike Headquarters.
Wow.
And
you just change it out according to what was going to happen.
That's right. And I remember after we finally settled, and it was one of those 4 o'clock in the morning meetings, after it was settled and after the faculty voted in favor of the contract and the board voted in favor of it, we took this banner over to the cottage, which was at the time where the president's office was and
right.
the executive offices were, and we hung this over the front doorway that said Strike Headquarters.
Ooh.
So it was
very powerful.
Yeah.
So,
but that was really very that was really a heavy burden. I mean, because you know the Taylor law in New York State is very fierce, and people lose 2 days' pay for every day that they're out. And I knew that there were many faculty, not 100%, but there were many faculty who were willing to take that risk, and to think that people are putting their own financial means in jeopardy was really a very heavy burden.
that is.
And you know, and from everything that I've learned from people who have been in labor a long time, you know, it's easy to go out and it's very hard to get back in. And
Right.
the issue was, once we go out, how are we going to get back in?
How do we work our way back?
Yeah. So that was probably one of the darkest times.
Now, through all of this, though, you've also been able to meet a lot of pretty famous and exciting people.
I have,
what
yeah.
stands out in your mind over the years?
There are two political people that really stand out. One was Bill Clinton.
I've heard he has tremendous charisma in person.
He has fabulous charisma. I first saw him at a NYSET convention in front of 3,000 delegates, and he was talking about, this was before he ran for president, he was talking about what he had done in Arkansas, particularly with the education system there, and you could have heard a pin drop. He was spellbinding, just absolutely incredible. And I met Hillary on several occasions, and she, again, very charming, very smart woman, but probably the most interesting thing, she came to Suffolk Community College in probably, 2005, and there was a private viewing, or a private meeting with her with, there were 2 classes of students. It was at the Grand Campus. She said she would only come if there was no media, and the students got to ask her questions, just questions that they wanted, and they were polished, so after it was finished, Kevin Peterman, the vice president, and I were there, and Kevin took out his camera, which he takes everywhere with him, and he wanted to get a picture of Hillary with the students and with Dr. Pippins, Dr. McKay, and he's standing up on the auditorium chairs over in the MA building, and he's straddling the legs to get this picture down like this.
Shot.
So I go over and I'm holding his legs so he doesn't fall. And,
how symbolic.
Yeah, right. And so Hillary looks up and she said, "That's the picture that should be taken." So he takes it off of her, he takes the camera off of his neck, hands it to her. She takes the picture of me holding Kevin up on the
I would like
thing.
to see that picture. Who else stands out that you met that was really inspiring?
The other person was Howard Dean, and I met Howard Dean in Albany. We were having a meeting at the Desmond Hotel, and there were probably about 10 of us in the room, and Howard Dean came in to talk to Alan Lubin, who is the executive vice president and really the political person for NYSET. And this was right before he started his major campaign. He wanted to talk to the NYSET activists, and we had this incredible conversation talking about government, talking about what government can do, what government doesn't do well, talking about healthcare. And this was the first time that I ever saw healthcare put into a national context, that how the healthcare costs were really kind of driving the national economy. And he talked about what he had done in Vermont and how it had worked, and how, again, bringing in practitioners so that you knew exactly what the issues were, keeping out the business people, but finding out what you needed, and then using it from that, from that standpoint of both what patients need, what doctors need to do, what they have to do for patients, and working from that context, and then you build the business or the program out from that. But he was inspiring in a way that made what he was saying he was very thoughtful, and you don't often see politicians in those thoughtful moments where they really are looking at the global picture and bringing it down to the individual and its impact in the individual. And so,
not spinning, just really.
Just really talking about it. And it was so early in he had no managers. I mean, he came to Albany by himself from Vermont. So.
And just spoke from the heart.
Yeah.
And I love my benefits. I have to say, that is huge. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit as really kind of a crowning moment.
Yes. No, the health insurance benefits and the health insurance program that we have as part of our contract and as part of the benefits for all of the county employees is probably one of the most rewarding things that I was ever engaged in. And early in the 1980s, the Director of Labor Relations at the time called all of the union presidents together, and at this little business place, it's no longer there, but it was basically an HMO, and he said that he wanted to develop a self-insured health plan that involved all of the union people, all of the county employees. And I remember sitting around the table with all of the union presidents at the time, and we're looking at each other suspiciously like, if he wants it, we don't want it. And it was the first time that we were kind of pulled together. After that meeting, a couple of the police unions, in fact, the head of the superior officers, a gentleman by the name of Artie Cliff, called me up and he said, Ellen, he said, I think as unions we need to kind of come together because I think we're being pulled at one from each other. We're being told things by the political people, and I think we need to come together as unions and decide what we need, because otherwise one group is going to get more than the other, and at the expense of the others.
Divide and conquer.
Absolutely. So we all came together and we began meeting on a regular basis, and we formed a group that's now referred to as SCOPE, the Suffolk Coalition of Public Employees.
Fantastic.
And we meet every month, and it started out that we met just to talk about our meetings with various legislators. Some of the unions had people who regularly attended all the legislative committee meetings, so we were sharing the information that each of us was hearing in our different corners and in our different areas of interest, and making sure that we weren't being pitted against each other, like, oh, we're going to do everything we can for the college, and then the police would go in and we're going to do everything we can. Yeah, and so part of this was, that we were all together and that we talked. And there were a couple of issues that came up when they talked about, again, in the early 90s, they wanted to cut all of our salaries by 5% because there was a perceived budget crisis in the county. We were all together. We got our attorneys together and we fought that because they couldn't unilaterally do this. And it evolved to the point that we realized that we began doing political screenings together. So we had a room where we had police, and we had the AME, and we had correction, and we had deputy sheriffs, and we had the faculty, and we had the guild, and we all had our turn asking these political candidates our questions, and they had to answer in front of all of us. So they couldn't just say, you are my number one, interest. They had to address all of us at the same time. And
it's really the whole thing at its best.
Yes, I mean it was really coalition building. It was labor that was working together as a unit, not for each separate interest. And again, I think it was probably around 1988. We were all in the what was the predecessor to the Empire Plan, which was the statewide plan, and they began having, they had changed it somewhat, and the premiums went up 68% in 1 year. And
Huge.
I mean, there were headlines in Newsday, and they were saying that, this is going to bankrupt the county. And in our scope group, we decided that, we probably have to do something, or we're not going to be able to negotiate contracts. Everything is going to be eaten up in healthcare costs, and we don't have any control over it whatsoever.
Right.
So we began talking to the county. The county was interested in it. We had probably 3 different attempts before we actually came up with EMHP. I mean, where we actually went out, we sent out RFPs, we interviewed groups, and then the county kind of pulled away and said, maybe we can't do it. But basically in 1991, it was during the last year of the Halpin administration, we did send out an RFP. We also had accountants that came in and actuaries who looked at our claims versus how much we were paying in premium. The county had one, we had one, and there was a third independent party, and they all came in within $1 million, and they said basically that the county was paying more in claims than we were getting back in, the county was paying more in premium than we were getting back in claims. So we took the step and formed EMHP. It was also the first time that the county had done coalition bargaining with all of the unions. It took health insurance out of our individual bargaining. And one of the things, there are 2 guiding principles. One was we wanted to maintain the fact that the county paid for health insurance for all employees. So whether you were a policeman, whether you were a deputy county executive,
Right.
whether you were a day laborer under the AIM contract, everyone, in other words, health insurance is a right for everyone. Your status in terms of your work or the salary that you make should not determine your health benefits.
Okay.
And so we all agreed to that. And the other thing that we also agreed is that we agreed that while we wanted the best benefits that we could get, we also knew that we had to contain the costs and that it was important for the unions, as unions, to alert our members as to how to be smart consumers of healthcare. And so we were very important in trying to help our members understand why it was important to go to in-network doctors.
Right.
I mean, when we started, we had 62% of our membership, the county-wide membership, went to in-network doctors. We now have 92% that go to in-network doctors. When they can't find an in-network doctor, they let us know.
Right.
I mean, so there was a big education there.
Which benefits everyone.
Oh, it absolutely
involved.
does. And it was also important for us to stay on top of our providers. I mean, when you're in a business arrangement, you know, you have to appreciate the fact that they are in business and they should
Right.
make some money, but not so much money that it is at the patient or the consumer's expense. And so we have monthly meetings, and at the monthly meetings, not only do we deal with the appeals that come from our members, but all of our providers have to come in and tell us what they're doing. We get, you know, I probably know more about health insurance than any layperson should ever know, and how it operates. But because there was this attention to detail with, and not just me, with all of the unions, that I think that's why we have as effective a healthcare program that we do have now. That because people are paying attention to the details. We don't let things slide. We don't say, oh, well, we'll catch up later. No, this is very important. And we've hired very smart consultants to work with us. We have, we have our own legal counsel. We have our own benefits counsel. We get separate advice from them and not just from the providers who are saying, well, this is what we have to do, or this is the way they deal with it in industry. We're always getting comparisons because, again, we want the plan to work. We want it to work well. Especially
and for a long time.
And for a long time. And so it's now been 21 years.
Unbelievable.
And it's...
I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, how many hours has she been in meetings? I can't even fathom how many times you have sat at meetings, and that is a tough thing to do. Maybe if I could just kind of turn things back to a little bit more the personal. So when did you start to think about retiring? Because you are retiring.
I am retiring. I probably started thinking about it probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And part of that was, again, kind of like looking, I mean, no person is indispensable. But there comes a time when it's time for people to leave. And I've seen local unions where the president really outstayed his or her time, and as a result, there was no one left to kind of succeed that person, and the local union had struggled a lot to kind of get back to its previous position. And I mean, I've been blessed. I have worked with such an incredible group of people who are personal friends now,
Right.
And
War buddies.
yeah,
in a way.
war buddies. You're absolutely right. But I mean, and who are talented in their own way, and who each of them, brings in a different quality. And so we have just, I hate to say a well-oiled machine, but it's like we feed off each other, and things work well. It's an incredible experience to live. But so, I've been with Kevin for over 30 years. Joyce has been with us for 20 years. Sean has been the grievance officer for 10 years. I mean, it's so, and before Sean, we had Sam Ligon. I mean, people got involved because they wanted to. They had something to contribute. And as I saw that, at every significant birthday, it was like, all right, now you got to decide what you want to do. And I was really looking at a kind of right time to be able to retire so that things would be in place, that we had some sort of, if you want to call succession planning, that there were new people that were coming in and were getting involved in the union. I guess the 2010 collective bargaining agreement that goes till 2015 was one of those milestones. All right, we've done that, and so now there's a long-term contract union. So it's the right time.
Okay.
And it's a right, and I'm also fortunate that I have appointments to the NYSET Board of Directors representing community colleges in the state, and I'm also on the AFT Program and Policy Committee.
So you'll
for higher ed.
continue those?
I'll continue those for another year and a half. So that's my transition, even though I'm not going to be doing the day-to-day stuff
You still have
at
your
the Faculty
hand in.
Association. Yeah.
And what are you looking forward to?
Well, most immediately, my son's getting married at the end of August, so that's going to take a lot of focus and energy. And I'm really looking forward to being able to decide what I want to do. A lot of stuff has been almost on automatic pilot.
Right.
You get up in the morning, you go to work, and no matter what kind of list you have in front of you, things happen and you get involved in it. And now I'm going to be able to get up and say, all right, what do I want to do? What do I want to engage my energies in today? And that'll be really a new experience for me.
You've earned it. I think you've earned it.
And maybe I'll run another triathlon. Who knows?
Well, when I read your bio and I saw triathlon, by then I was just, you had me at hello. How did she run a triathlon too, on top of everything? Is that a high point?
That was a fun point. And what was really interesting about that is there were a couple of neighbors who said, let's do this. There was a mini triathlon out in Southold. So we decided that we were all going to do this, and we were all of different ages. There were two men and myself and another woman. And so we all signed up for it, and we, and this was, so in December, when Why Not Be Fit was advertised at the Ammerman campus, I signed up for it, and I said, but I really want to do training so I can do this. I hadn't ridden a bike for a long time, hadn't done swimming for a long time. I'd been jogging,
How were you
on a
going to
regular
fit
basis.
that in?
But anyway, I started doing the training, and and again, as we're getting close, because it was in the middle of July, and so I started doing bike rides, and then I started putting them together. I do jogging and then bike riding, and then I do bike riding and get off that and do jogging, and then I started doing laps at the local pool, and so the day comes for and I said to my husband, and the only bike we had at home was my daughter's pink 22-inch bike. And so we put the seat up so I could ride it around town. And I said, I really should get like maybe one of those hybrid bikes. And my husband said, but are you going to really ride it after this? Why don't you just use that? So it was like, okay, I can't deal with this. I'm just going to ride. And around town, riding a pink bike was okay. So we go out to Southold. We're staying at my friend's house. Her husband is one of the people who's going to participate in all of this. My husband and my daughter agreed that they would go and help out with the triathlon administrative stuff, like putting numbers on the athletes and taking registration things, pinning on
Your
logos and
right.
numbers and stuff. And they had to be there at 5 o'clock. The athletes had to be there at 6:30. The race started at 7:30. So my husband and my daughter go there at 5:30. And my husband looks around, and here are like really, really prime athletes with their Trek bikes that you could hold with one finger. And he said, oh my God, Ellen is going to kill me. So my claim to fame was I did not have the smallest bike in the triathlon. There was an 8-year-old who also rode, and he had the smallest one, but mine was the second smallest. Pink with streamers, it was...
And that's what you did.
That's what I did.
Oh, that's great.
But I came in third in my age category.
That's fantastic.
So I have a little marble plaque that says that I ran in the race. And,
That's amazing. You've been running a lot of races, Ellen, I think.
Well, I did count the number of times I ran for election in the faculty association, and it was 18 times.
Wow.
So
18.
yes, every 2 years.
I wanted to end, not that I can ever compete with the Actors Studio, but I thought I would end with a little bit of a word game. So I'll say the word and you just say whatever word comes to mind. Okay, student.
Learning.
Teacher.
Nurturing.
Contract.
Tough.
Suffolk.
Wonderful.
Passion.
About everything.
And finally, retirement.
Unknown.